Hey everybody, and welcome to RPG Horror Stories with D&D Doge. In today's video, we have a tale about a player that gets a tad too tipsy and ruins a game of Dungeons & Dragons, and a tale about a player with main character syndrome. So without further ado, let's get right into these stories. I never thought I'd have to physically remove someone from my apartment. By Reddit user Snowstorm27. Early this summer, I started a new 5e group. All four of us knew each other, and everyone had played before, so I figured what could possibly go wrong. But that was naive of me. The table consisted of me, the DM, as well as my boyfriend, the Warlock, and two friends of ours, the Bard and the Monk. Almost as soon as we began the campaign, we had to stop because of some work and school requirements on mine and the Monk's part. But a few weeks ago, we were able to pick it back up, though I deeply regret that we did. Everyone had been away from their characters for about 2 months, so there was the, as expected, relearning curve. However, one thing that I had underestimated was how disruptive being in person again would be. We had played remotely the first time, but since we could meet in person, I thought we would do that instead. The problems began when we revealed our snacks and booze. My boyfriend and I were hosting, so we had ordered a few pizzas and gotten a small bottle of liquor, just for some shots. Our friend, the Bard, had decided to be charitable and brought a larger case of White Claws for the whole table to enjoy, along with some bags of chips. Then the Monk arrives with nothing but a mid-sized bottle of hard liquor, significantly harder than anything anyone else had brought. We were a little concerned, but we thought it wouldn't be a big deal. The Monk immediately grabs a White Claw, pours it into a glass, and then pours a few shots of her very hard liquor into it. Now, we're all trying to be polite and not call her an alcoholic, but the rest of us all glance around the table at each other, though she did not seem to notice us sharing that moment. The game starts, and we're trying to have a good time. The party had to return the item that they were hired to retrieve to the quest giver, which should have been super easy, like maybe a half an hour or so. Though it took nearly 2 hours to get from entering town to talking to the quest giver. They didn't even make any stops. The Monk just kept derailing the conversation. Now, it had been a few months, and I was ready for some goofs and some jokes, but she just would not get back on track, bringing up memes on her phone and seeming to text with other people. I gave her an initial warning after the first off-topic meme, and she quieted down for a bit. I figured we'd all been lonely for a while because of quarantine, and maybe we all just needed to get it out of our systems. Once they arrived at the quest giver, the first actually in-character stuff started up. Due to some complications that had arisen during the mission, they wouldn't be able to be paid in the full amount. The quest giver simply didn't have the funds available. The Warlock and Bard said okay. They knew they had done the right thing, and he had promised future work, so they were fine with it. But the Monk was livid. She starts pitching a fit, and I had a hard time telling whether or not it was supposed to be in character. Her character then draws her weapon and demands more money, while she is, at the table, rising to her feet, yelling at me. I should have just caught it there, but in the name of getting her to calm down so the neighbors didn't call a noise complaint in, I just placated her and gave her something else. I don't even remember what it was. I called for a break. I had to use the restroom, and I wanted another slice of pizza. We have one bathroom, so we had to take it in turns though. The whole time we were on break, the Monk just would not shut up. She was probably very drunk by this point, but we just could not get her to stop. While she was in the bathroom, I talked to the Warlock and the Bard. They were a little frazzled, but they still wanted to continue on, so the three of us agreed to just not indulge her craziness and soldier on. That was a mistake. By the time she got back, she was very drunk, and she started pouring herself another massively alcoholic mixed drink, and I don't think she ever really got back to the game. I managed to get the warlock and the bard to a decent enough stopping point, which took about an hour, though it would have only taken 10 minutes if the monk hadn't been loudly and drunkenly interrupting. I kept cutting her off and texting the other two players, but they really wanted to continue playing, so I said okay. The monk did not know the bard super well, out of character, and started to talk to her. She asked if she would be okay if she made physical contact with her. We're all used to the monk being a little touchy-feely when she's drunk, so we're okay with it. But then, she proceeds to snap the bard's bra strap and starts making really unwelcome sexual advances, which were immediately rebuffed. I think that was the only time the monk ever slowed down and thought about how her actions were affecting others. The game came to an abrupt halt when she started to lay the groundwork for making similar advances at my boyfriend and I. I stood up and said that that was the end of the session, and time for everyone to go home. The monk then says that she'll finish her drink and go home. My boyfriend and I have individually been on the receiving end of some of the unsavory sexual stuff, so I was unwilling to allow that to continue. When it happened, he stood up and left the table. He was not just going to sit there. A few minutes pass, and I can tell that the monk is deliberately not finishing her drink to prolong her stay. It's rude to tell people point blank to leave after all. This whole time, she's talking at the bard, trying to speedrun becoming friends. I ask her if I can help her pack her things up, as it's the polite way to tell someone that they're overstaying their welcome. She says no thanks, and goes right back on to talking the bard's ear off. And another minute passes while I check on my boyfriend to make sure he's okay. I come back, and she is still talking, with no progress on the drink. I can tell that she is taking advantage of our kindness and politeness, so I tell her that it's time to pack up her things, and that I will take her home. Now. She tries to give a long goodbye to everyone, and I am forced to physically put my hands on her shoulders and say, "No, it's time for you to go. Get in the car." As I drove her home, I don't think she understood just how pissed I was, and I think that just made me more angry. The warlock, bard, and I were really looking forward to playing our Dungeons & Dragons game, as they are super invested into their characters. Plus, I had a lot of stuff planned. She disrespected everyone's time by being obnoxious and refusing to pay attention. She disrespected everyone by just getting stupid drunk at the table. And then she sexually harasses the bard, who is her acquaintance at best. And then me and my boyfriend, despite knowing that we're both really sensitive to that stuff. Yeah, no. The next morning, I told her that the game was done, that we would not meet anymore. I also told her that the rest of the table was really uncomfortable with her behavior, and we would not be returning to that game. The warlock, bard, and I had a really long talk a couple of days ago. We think we will continue on without the monk, as scheduling allows. I didn't want to force them back into an uncomfortable position, but I am glad that they were willing to give this campaign another shot. After all, I'm still just flabbergasted at how rude, inconsiderate, and even sexually gross the monk got. We've been friends for years, and she had never acted anything like that around me before. I just hope that we can all put that problem player behind us. Now, drinking a little bit during a game of D&D can be a pretty fun way to unwind, and can even help someone loosen up a bit to get more into the game and roleplay. Though you have to be careful not to overdo it. It sounds to me like Monk probably wasn't keeping track of how much she was drinking, or perhaps even had a bit of a drinking problem. But even still, being drunk does not excuse Monk's actions when she started getting uncomfortably touchy and feely with the other players. Now, if this were me in this situation, I would have had to talk to Monk about what transpired, see if she would apologize for it, and ask the other players if they would give her a second chance. Granted that she don't drink during the game. But at the same time, I don't blame OP for not even wanting to deal with that, and just booting Monk entirely. Let's move on. But before we do, I hope you consider giving the video a like and subscribing. If not for me, then how about for Alice?
Allie.
How could you resist that cuteness? But with that said, let's get into the story. D&D the movie, starring this guy and only this guy. Throwaway account in case the accused comes across this. One of our players has main character syndrome. It is getting increasingly frustrating dealing with this guy, and our DM is too new to really properly recognize and deal with it, which isn't his fault, but it's kind of terrible. We are coming up on the 1-year anniversary of our little group, which is an exciting benchmark, but naturally, as time goes on, we only become more and more aware of each other's habits and flaws. Naturally, our group isn't perfect, but I think most of us have done a great job so far speaking up about our concerns and adapting to feedback. One such player, the youngest of us, still has a lot that she can improve on, but has shown a lot of growth over the last few months, while another, who is admittedly the reason our group came together in the first place, seems to have no self-awareness about how their playstyle is negatively affecting the group. They have major main character syndrome. It's recently become more of a concern as our current campaign draws to a close, with only a handful of sessions left. The player recently adopted a secondary character, a DM-assigned NPC turned PC, putting their first one on the back burner a bit, as the other two players have done before, just for funsies. However, this new character, we will call him Sam, caters to all the worst parts of main character syndrome. Sam has a tragic past involving outliving his entire family, as a plot-related magical accident has left him immortal. Because of this past, he never gets involved with what the rest of us are doing. We want to help decorate town for a special holiday. He refuses and goes off alone to sulk, all the while baiting us to get us to follow him to dig into why. We all have a slumber party. He goes to bed early and listens to his dead kid's music box all night, every night, all the while baiting us to eavesdrop and dig into why. Of course, our DM naturally gravitates towards these emotional solo scenes, always giving into the player's desire for attention, no matter what the rest of us are doing. In the last session, 4 out of 5 of us, plus a major NPC, decided to hang out together and have some fun after our harrowing, plot-related experience of losing our memories of each other. But we got exactly 0 screen time for this interaction, in favor of Mr. Sam McSadpants. What makes it worse is that Sam is directly related to the BBEG of the campaign. They are immortal brothers, with literal hundreds of years of history together, which means that even though this guy has only been in our party for 3 or 4 sessions, less than a week in game, and even though the rest of us have spent the last couple of months building up a rapport with the BBEG, absolutely none of that matters, since Sam has a connection that no one will ever be able to contest with. Any scene between the party and the BBEG becomes a personal scene between Sam and the BBEG that the rest of us can't contribute to. Not only this, but the solo scene from the previous session comes along and reveals that another major NPC, from my character's backstory no less, and literally my best friend, who I came up with that is special for my character, is also directly related to Sam. And my character wasn't involved in this reveal at all, nor was it ever brought to their attention, so that was fun. Besides this, there have been many instances, both with Sam and the primary character, where Sam's player has interrupted the ongoing scene that another player character is having with a stupid quip, usually related to how he has no place in this conversation. For example, player character Sonia will be talking to her best friend NPC, Kendra, about this dude Jake, who asked us to get some pancakes for him. This happened before Sam joined the party, so Sam interrupts with a joke about how he doesn't know what anyone's talking about. Who the F is Jake? What is a pancake? Haha, aren't I funny? Pay attention to me. It's annoying, frustrating, and incredibly rude. Like, would you kindly shut up and leave the talking to the people who actually do know what's going on so we can progress the plot? Maybe you can ask questions later and bond with the other players. What? No? You want to wander off and talk about your tragic backstory again? F you too, I guess. This kind of monopoly over the story was pretty okay for me at first, as we started with a smaller group than we have now, and I was a new player, and generally not comfortable yet with leading the narrative. But now that we have more players, and I have become much more confident in my abilities, Sam's player has not given up any of the floor. Which brings me to yet another issue. Sam has no connection to any other player character, and makes no effort to make connections, even after the issue has been brought to their attention. He has more personal connections with NPCs that he's just met, including NPCs that already have personal connections to other player characters, as evidenced by the scene in the last session, than he does with the party that he's been traveling with for a week. Sam, and honestly Sam's player, only ever talks about himself. It sucks. My newest concern now, as this campaign draws to a close, is the new campaign coming up. Our Dungeon Master is still in the very early planning stages, with only a general idea of what the setting's theme and starting hook will be. As we have all been thinking about our next characters over the past few weeks, Sam's player has been by far the most ambitious. Most of us have come up with general ideas for the basis of a character, like race or class, while our Dungeon Master finds his footing in the new setting. But Sam's player has almost entirely fleshed out the new character, we'll call her Rose, complete with many of their own world-building ideas. One of these ideas just happens to be the fact that Rose is horribly cursed, and if she dies, a terrifying continent-destroying evil will be released. Naturally, her character motivation will be breaking this curse, but even before our DM has planned anything concrete, it's so glaringly obvious that protecting Rose will need to take precedent over almost anything else the party does. This isn't how D&D should work. The player is a perfectly nice person, with some excellent improv and roleplay skills. They always were. But God, is it going to be hard to keep playing with them if we can't get them to care about the other player characters? How do you even confront someone about this? I'm almost dreading this new campaign. Edit. I'm not the only player who feels this way, and the issue has been brought to the attention of both the player and the DM at least once before, though pretty gently, as the player did lose a close family member to COVID recently. As our DM is still pretty new, he's still adapting to dealing with a player like this, so expectations weren't high to begin with. The other players and I have successfully shut down several interruption attempts in the last few sessions, but it's honestly a pretty exhausting way to play, constantly having to be on our toes because of this other guy. Obviously, after the introduction of Sam, there's not much the DM could have done about retconning the brother of the BBEG part, but rest assured, me and these other players are planning to speak with them both more directly about the details surrounding Rose before the new campaign begins. It certainly sounds like this player does enjoy the spotlight and has a bad case of main character syndrome. Then making a character for the new campaign that, if they die, ends the world basically would entail that the campaign revolved around that, at least at first. The Dungeon Master could always make that one of the starting quests that would lead into a wider narrative that brings the party together and go from there. It is good that OP and the other players have decided to have a talk with the DM and that player about these issues, and hopefully their new campaign goes well. Remember, if something about a game is bothering you, or most of the table for that matter, talk about it. And I know I say this a lot, but communication is key for any tabletop RPG. But that is all I have for you today. As always, I appreciate all of you, and may your games remain horror story free. Until next time.